The privatization of the electricity industry has not delivered what it promised and has instead driven up costs for consumers, a report has found. The Australia Institute today released the report The Costs of Market Experiments, which estimates each electricity customer is now paying an extra $100 to $200 per year to cover the costs of things like advertising, sales and marketing. The benefits of competition were clearly oversold, the report states. In the meantime, we have flipped from a cheap electricity country to an expensive electricity country. The report looks at electricity prices from before companies were privatized in the 1990s and found prices for electricity had soared faster than almost any other major consumer item. In 1998-99, about 23% of the cost of electricity was due to the cost of fossil fuels, but by 2014-15 this had dropped to 7%. This was not due to fossil fuel prices falling, they had in fact increased, but it was because other costs had risen dramatically. The industry now spends more on finance and banking costs than fossil fuels. During the same period, these costs rose from 3% to 10% of the total value of output. The financial sector have reaped huge rewards from power privatization. The Australia Institute senior economist David Richardson said, "Thanks to privatization, companies are also spending more money on advertising their products and trying to get new customers." The report found sales staff had increased by almost 400%. Productivity was also poor. Between 2000 and 2018, the value of real output per employee fell by 37.8%. Because of the wasted labor being put towards sales and other activities associated with privatization. The report estimated the total cost of all wasteful activities was between $1,030 million and $1,940 million in 2015-16. Privatization of the electricity industry has resulted in enormous increases in wasteful spending, including high-pressure sales tactics, excessive numbers of managers, dizzying advertising and so-called chase costs, Mr. Richardson said. He said these costs had been passed on to customers in their electricity bill, leaving households more than $200 worse off a year. Further fragmenting the electricity sector will see these costs increase as more players set up with their own advertising departments, duplicate management structures and so on. He said, the productivity of electricity production has been dismal under privatization. Contrary to the promises of the architects of the competition model, the report suggests that political leaders have focused on specific villains and scapegoats to blame for the problems, and this includes blaming renewable energy sources for higher prices and blackouts, despite mounting evidence that renewables are now cheaper and more reliable than conventional fossil fuel generation. Mr. Richardson said the Morrison government's big stick approach to reducing electricity prices was simply aimed at managing the political optics about the problems in the system and not addressing its real causes. Prime Minister Scott Morrison has threatened to break up large electricity companies if they were ripping consumers off. But Mr. Richardson said this was not enough to fix the problem. Reining in soaring electricity prices requires addressing the huge inefficiencies and wastes associated with privatization, not just symbolic tough talk to a handful of CEOs, he said.